Welcome, everybody. Lovely to have you with us once again. So here we are, and we're here just to meditate and relax and open ourselves into what we're calling the spiritual sky. And if you get the idea of the sky, just the sky, just that we know above us, you have this idea of expansiveness, right? Because it's not really, it doesn't end anywhere, right? You can say, well, the sky goes around the earth, but that would be true, but also, where does it stop, right? I think where's the end of the sky? And in a sense, that's us. So, well, not really in a sense, it is us. It's not a part of us we identify too often with, because we tend to see ourselves as these contracted beings locked into these physical bodies and struggling for survival, not necessarily hunger, although in some cases that's true, but the survival of just getting by or getting along or not being trodden on or whatever. And that kind of puts us into more of a contracted state. So we want to let that go for this hour anyway, and do absolutely nothing. So there's nothing for us to do here whatsoever, except let go. Is that a doing? I don't know if that's a doing. Not letting go perhaps is a doing, right? But if we're letting go into who we are, it's kind of an undoing. So I think undoing. So it's like do nothing, undo, unwind, so that this begins to relax. You begin to create more spaces within your being. And that's what we're attempting to do here. So let's begin by hearing two excerpts from John Roger that, as you know, I like to start off with, and then we'll get to our meditation today.
The divine presence is exactly that thing that is present everywhere. And I could take you to a radical point of view and tell you that there really is no soul. There really is only this presence that is omnipotent, omnipresent at all times. But we talk about the soul as that individualized energy to give you a sense of well-being, so that you can wave your dilemma away as you rise up in consciousness to find out you are what you have always been, and you are the one you've been looking for. If you're not pleasing yourself by being who you are, I got some sad news for you. That's tough, because that's all there is. If you haven't found that place yet inside of you that is full and brilliant, that's tough, because that's all there is. But when you get there, that's enough, because that's all there is. That's all there is for everybody on all the levels of consciousness. The bright, brilliant radiance of our beingness.
For some reason, I think we all need that constant reminder that we're already where we need to be. We're not going anywhere. We're just awakening or opening or allowing ourselves to be who we are. And that should be the simplest thing in the world, but it turns out that it's not such a simple thing, but it's a simple idea. I say it's not easy because of all the layers that's around us, that has encrusted itself into us, of all these conditionings. And so we have this culture that gets easily triggered. People will say something and will get upset, or easily polarized, where someone will say something and we'll just be so righteous about it, we'll take the opposite side. And all of us, all of these things are locking us into this dance in the physical world, when really we could be dancing in the spiritual worlds. And that's really what we want to be doing. As some of you know, that I'm a little obsessed with space, space between things, the in-between. And Joanne Avison really was the one that introduced me to that idea when she started talking about fascia many years ago. She talked about the in-between. And over the years, it's kind of culminated in this place where I realized that the in-between is where things actually happen. And when I was studying ballet, our teacher would say that the artistry happens in the transitions. So in other words, the artistry that you see, this kind of nebulous idea of artistry, happens between the movements, in the transitions. It's not in the final pose or even in the beginning pose. Those would be stagnant and lifeless. What happens is the movement in between. So this idea of things being in between is so important, and something that I'm exploring in all avenues of my life, my daily schedule. What can happen in between things rather than just doing things, and how to take advantage of those in-between moments. In movement, those of you who are doing the Qigong will be looking at what happens in the space in between. How can we enter that space? And also in meditation, which we're going to do right now. We had this speaker at the last Harmonic Self, again, someone that Joanne introduced the class to, Neil Thies. He's a liver pathologist, he's an MD, a scientist, but he's also a Zen practitioner as well, and also discovered what's called the interstitium. At least from his angle, he discovered it. The fascia people had discovered it a long while beforehand, but at least he came up with the scientific explanation of the spaces in between ourselves, in between the fascia, and what that can mean for us. So he's been a Zen practitioner, and he talked to the Harmonic Self class a weekend or so ago, not last weekend, the weekend before last. And he said something that really changed my perspective enormously. And it had to do with a very, very simple thing that he said, that you're going to say, really, that changed your mind? And I will tell you, yes, it did. We are constantly told in spiritual practice to be in the now, be present, be here now. In the early days, John Roger said it this way. He said, pay attention. That was his way of saying, be in the now, be present. And it's constantly emphasized in any spiritual practice you take, really. And I mean, there's many religions and spiritual practices, but most of them come around to this idea of be present, be here now. The moment is the only thing that's really alive. And which is easy to say, but difficult to do. And so Neil had this idea. We were talking about the between. I think it was towards the end of his talk where I kind of asked him, I said, well, next time I want to have you back to talk about sound and the in-between. And I think at that point, at some point in the talk, he said, well, the in-between could be the present moment. He said it's between the past and the future. Now, that sounds pretty obvious, but suddenly I had found an answer I'd been looking for years, which is what is it to be truly present? And it's really to be between the past and the future. And in this meditation, and you can begin to enter into this, what I'd like you to do or play with is this idea of this in-between, the present moment being in between. And any time, and this is the difficulty with the now, because if I say right now, it's already gone. I say now, that's gone already. So it's just like, where is this now that we're trying to grasp? And I'm saying, just see if you can enter into it. And it is a portal to me. It's a great way of coming awake in terms of being what we call present, right? I'm in that absolute present moment. And also it's a great way of falling asleep, because if you can't get to sleep at night, just enter that portal of the present moment, and you may find yourself just completely gone. So it kind of has that paradox to it as well. But for the purpose of this meditation, I'd like you to play with this idea of just closing your eyes and entering into that present moment between this past and future. See it as almost like a sliver or an opening, a portal into another world, into a spaciousness, through a kind of a slit or a gap that's between the past and the future, and enter into it. You can enter into it as if you're kind of diving into it outwardly, or you can enter into it as if you're diving into it inwardly. However it comes across as entering into that space. The philosopher Rainier, or poet as well, Maria Rilke, said there's only one journey: going inside yourself. And the wonderful author Hermann Hesse, or Hesse, said, within you there is a stillness and a sanctuary to which you can retreat at any time and be yourself. This is a quote from a Japanese samurai a couple of 100 years ago or so, Yamamoto Tsunetomo, who said a person's whole life is a succession of moment after moment. If one fully understands the present moment, there will be nothing else to do and nothing else to pursue. And this was always one of my favorite quotes, the one I just read. Never quite saw how to get there, but again, these words from Neil Thies really helped me. This in-between, the past and the future. And John Roger tells us that when we go into memory, we're no longer present in the spirit. We're in a contraction of the mind and the emotions, and it actually has no value for us. And then he gives us a key that may be valuable for you in this meditation. He said, to gain awareness of soul, you move to each moment of divine beingness. You don't let your mind disturb you, and you don't let your emotions push you around. You just breathe in and breathe out, holding the focus as the present action completes itself. You don't complete it. I don't complete it. The action of spirit completes itself in its own timing. So here again we see there's not a doing action. No one is completing anything. The action of spirit completes itself in its own timing. We just breathe in and breathe out, holding the focus as the present action completes itself. So I mentioned Zen, and John Roger didn't have a lot to say about Zen, but there is this quote which is relevant for this meditation. JR says, Zen is the art of focusing on what is in the moment and making that moment absolutely perfect. It refines everything down to seeing what can be discerned in each moment and making each moment complete within itself. If it's not discernible, it's not Zen. And who cares? And as soon as you don't care, you're in a perfect state of Zen. Continue to find that in between and enter into it. So just continue to enter that in between. There's absolutely nothing to do. It can be a very vital key to handling our lives as well. John Roger tells us you can get free of your addictions. You have been given everything you need to alleviate any addiction you have. You can do it any time you care to do it by focusing here and now. It's a very simple key, except that your addictions will tell you that you can't do it that way. So you must stop listening to that which says it can't be done and start doing it. This isn't doing everything all at once, but it is doing what comes into your here and now existence for you to handle here and now. If you are talking to people while reflecting back on last week, you are splitting yourself. When you go into this or something similar, you are going into memory, and memory isn't what the heart desires. The heart doesn't want a memory. It wants a here and now. So just allow this in between to give you access to your spiritual heart. Just keep entering and entering this refined gossamer moment. And as you do, feeling yourself entering a more expansive world. Begin to feel the freedom of not being bound by the past, not being bound by your thoughts about the future. That in between, there is a spaciousness and a freedom in which you can be entirely yourself. Keep entering that in between. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, author of The Little Prince, said, "In anything at all, perfection is finally attained, not when there is no longer anything to add, but when there is no longer anything to take away." That in between. John Roger tells us, is there any hurry to go anywhere? Where are you going that you are not already there? And John Roger again tells us, do whatever it takes to bring yourself to right now, because you cannot transcend the physical from yesterday, and you can't do it from tomorrow. And just to emphasize this once again from John Roger, right now is the time to partake of everything. Right now is when the consciousness of reality is present. There is no time when it will be present other than right now. Therefore, you don't have to go any place. Continue to enter that in-between, that fine opening between the past and the future. Allow yourself to dive into it. Henry David Thoreau tells us, you must live in the present. Launch yourself on every wave. Find your eternity in each moment. Beautiful summary of what we're doing here from Thoreau. You must live in the present. Launch yourself on every wave. Find your eternity in each moment. Perhaps we would say here, launch yourself into the in-between, that ever so subtle moment, if we can even call it a moment, between the past and the future, where you are completely free, expansive, where you are the spiritual sky. You can begin to slowly bring yourself back, if you wish, just gently wiggling your fingers and toes. Of course, I was just wondering as I'm saying there, back from where? Because you're completely present in this moment, that you can stretch out your fingers a little bit and take a deeper breath, because maybe you feel you've been somewhere. So thank you all very much indeed. So huge thanks to Paul for that effort to make it such a beautiful experience for us all. And also to our gracious host, Stella Estevez, and our magnificent translator, Marie Jose Marignon. Anyway, God bless you all. Thank you so much. Such a pleasure to see you. And we'll see you on Thursday or next week. God bless. Thank you.